Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Triple N Media. I am Dr. NIK NIKAM, and today we are going to look at how to use the reverb function in Audacity using Windows 10. I'm using a Dell computer, so let's jump into Audacity. Here I have just recorded a small musical segment, and we are going to focus on how to use the reverb and look at all the different options available under the reverb function. And let's listen to the original track here for a second. Choti choti gaiya, chote chote gwal. All right, that's a little Indian music. Now we are going to go to effects, and under that I'm going to pull up reverb. And this reverb has already been sort of pre-programmed for this as a rehearsal before I started recording this. But we're going to start from scratch and see how we can do some minor variations to get the best sounding music for any given particular occasion. So first of all, we already listened to the dry sound. What I'm going to do is, let me go through these various subtitles under reverb, and then we're going to look at how each one of them can affect the quality of the sound. The first one is the room size. The smaller the room size, the more close the sound feels. Whereas if the room size is large, then it will be like singing in an auditorium where you're going to get a lot of echo. The second one is pre-delay. That is, how many milliseconds from the beginning of the original sound does the reverberation begins. Then reverberance percent. This represents the length of the reverberation compared to the original sound. If this is the length of the original sound, the reverberance percentage represents how long the reverberation is going to continue after it begins. Then we have damping. Damping, as the name indicates, has some damping effect, especially on the higher frequency sounds. That is, the higher frequency sounds decay faster compared to the lower frequency sound. Then we have tone low, tone high. By increasing the tone percentage all the way to 100, it is going to mute the sound, and as a result, it's going to give you a booming effect. Similarly, by keeping the tone percentage low, you are going to bring up more brightness in the high frequency range. Wet gain refers to the volume of the reverb component of the music. Dry gain represents the volume of the original sound which is recorded. Stereo width applies to stereo channels. By increasing the percentage, the variation in the right and the left speakers is going to be greater. If the stereo width is minimal, then both the right and the left speakers will have pretty much similar sound. So what we'll do is, let us look at the room size first. If you put the room size to 1, and let's leave the other things for right now, because otherwise we may not be able to see the effect. Okay, so here's the dry sound, which is the original one. Okay, and here's the preview. Okay, so you see the sound, and now let's increase the room size to 100%, like you're in a huge auditorium or a cathedral. And let's look at this sound here. For most recording purposes, I think the best thing is to keep the room size to 10 or 15% or 10 or 15 people, I would say, so that it would sound rich and close to the person who is listening.
Choti choti gaiya, chote chote gwal, chotas.
Okay, that's the first one. Now, pre-delay, that is, how many milliseconds do you wait after the original sound starts before the reverberation begins? Right now it is set at 10 milliseconds, and that's what we have been hearing so far. Let's jack it up to 200 milliseconds, and we'll see what the difference is.
Choti choti gaiya, chote chote gwal, chotas.
So you're hearing like two different voices which are separated by 200 milliseconds, and that's not going to cut it. So I would say just keep your to like about 10 milliseconds, and then depending on if you want to have a more echo effect, you can it's easier to type the number 10 milliseconds. See how it's. The next thing is reverberance. 100% means we want the length of the reverberation to be 100% of the original sound. And if you do that, let's see what happens. So we are saying the reverberation to continue as long as the original sound. And let's preview that.
Choti choti gaiya, chote chote gwal, chotas.
No, that's not what you want, and you don't want it to be zero because then there is no reverberation because the tail is cut off before it starts. So let's keep this to be about, let's try 50% and see how it sounds. So we want the reverberation to be half the length of the original sound, and let's preview that one.
Choti choti gaiya, chote chote gwal, chotas.
That sounds pretty reasonable, and we can go to 25% and see what happens. I think you have to just fine tune it. That's the main thing. Let's see, 25%.
Choti choti gaiya, chote chote gwal, chotas.
I think I like the 25% better than the 50%, and you can continue to fine tune it, maybe even try it like 10% because that's very short. The reverb is going to be very, very short. Let's see.
Choti choti gaiya, chote chote gwal, chotas.
We hear the reverb, but it is not really. But anyway, let's leave it at 25% right now. Okay, we got 25%. Damping. As I said, the damping affects the higher frequency sounds, where the higher frequency sounds decay faster than the lower frequency sounds. Since this music doesn't have real high frequency sounds, it may not make a difference if you have pretty high frequency music, like if a female singer is singing, then you may play with this and see how it makes a difference. But anyway, it's set to 50. Let's go to 100% and see if it makes a difference.
Choti choti gaiya, chote chote gwal.
Not a big
chotas.
difference. So I would leave it, and I would experiment that with high frequency sounds. That's where I think it has the biggest difference. Now we talk about tone low. That is, if you increase it all the way to 100%, let's see what happens.
Choti choti gaiya, chote chote gwal, chotas.
And let's bring it to 0. That means no change.
Choti choti gaiya, chote chote gwal, chotas.
So when it's like 100%, you hear some sort of a boom effect. Let me play it again.
Choti choti gaiya, chote chote.
It's like a bouncing sound.
Chotas.
So what I would do is just cut it.
Choti.
We'll cut it to like 50% and see if it makes a difference.
Choti choti gaiya, chote chote gwal,
Which is fine.
chotas.
All right, we can leave it there. Same thing with high frequency sound. You just have to play and see what difference it makes. Since I said we don't have a very high frequency sound in this music clip, it may not make a difference. Now the next one is wet gain. That is how much you want the wet component or the reverberance component volume to be increased by decibels. That is the unit for volume. So let us start off with it's set. Let's go to like we want 10 decibels. The wet one to go up.
छोटी छोटी गैया छोटे छोटे ग्वाल छोटा
I think it's okay. Now let's go to like -5, because if you go to -20, then there's no sound at all. So
छोटी छोटी गैया
So you have-
छोटे ग्वाल छोटा
So basically, you have not much effect of the reverberance component because the volume is so low. So I would just set it at like 1. And the same thing we can do with dry gain. We can just set it at -1 because we want to bring in some wet component into the system. So let's look at that.
छोटी छोटी गैया छोटे छोटे ग्वाल छोटा
All right. The next item here is stereo width. How much variation do you want in your right and left speakers? So I just set it at 36%, but we can experiment, but we may not see a big difference here. Let's find out. Let's put it to 100% variation. So
छोटी छोटी गैया छोटे छोटे ग्वाल छोटा
I don't think I hear a big difference, so we can just leave it at, if we say 0, then it's going to be no difference at all, so we can just leave it at like 25%. All right, these are all the different options we have with the reverb function, but there are a couple of other things I want to cover here, and that is we can just listen to the reverb segment of the music here without listening to the original track. So then we'll listen to the original track, and finally we listen to the composite sound. So if we click here wet only, then we preview just the reverb component, then you can hear that.
छोटी छोटी गैया छोटे छोटे ग्वाल छोटा
Okay, the reverb component sounds like it is coming from the back of the speaker. And it is got volume, so we can increase the volume and see if we want it any better. Let's go to like 3 decibels and just listen to the wet sound itself.
छोटी छोटी गैया छोटे छोटे ग्वाल छोटा
But I think number 1 should be all right. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to unclick the wet only, and there's one more button next to preview, and it is dry preview. That is the original sound with no reverb effect whatsoever. So now we are all set to see what's the difference between a dry sound and a mixed reverb sound. Are you ready? All right, let's listen to the dry sound now.
छोटी छोटी गैया छोटे छोटे ग्वाल छोटा
Okay, that is the original sound. Now let's listen to the composite mixed sound, which has the dry sound and the reverb added to that.
छोटी छोटी गैया छोटे छोटे ग्वाल छोटा
Here's the dry sound.
छोटी छोटी गैया छोटे छोटे ग्वाल छोटा
Here is the mixed sound.
छोटी छोटी गैया छोटे छोटे ग्वाल छोटा
Okay, the dry sound sounds like a little flat, whereas the mixed reverb sound has more fullness and richness, and it appears to come from the front of the speakers. Remember, I have set all these things to very minimal variations, and by changing these milliseconds pre-delay and increasing the percentage of reverberance, especially when you have low and high frequency sounds, then it is going to carry a lot more difference and a big change in the way you hear the sound compared to the dry sound itself. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is a long description of what are the various components of the reverb and what do they do and how to test them. As I said, there is no one clear-cut guideline for how to use the reverb. You just have to keep playing with these knobs and percentages and see which one sounds best for your particular style of music. And if it sounds good, that's the best setting for reverb for your particular music. I am Dr. NIK NIKAM, and please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we also have a Facebook page, which is NNN Media, and please do like our Facebook page. Until next time, I am Dr. NIK NIKAM for NNN Media. Thank you for watching.